this is going to be great.
Welcome to the White House Pod with David A.R. White.
Dylan, are you excited? I am so excited for this incredible guest who's agreed to be on the White House Pod. I mean, oh my gosh. Like, could you just say Superman?
I think God actually just blessed this podcast.
All right, I'm not gonna make this long, even though I have I have 52 pages here of the great Harry Lennix and his history. The man, the myth, the legend, Harry Lennix, ladies and gentlemen. I'm super stoked. How are you today?
David, I'm great, man. It's so good to see you. I'm looking at your handsome, smiling face, and I'm excited about our project as I was about the first time we met. So there we are.
Man, where are you coming from? Where are you? That's quite a painting behind you there.
Yeah, I think my wife put this together over here. I guess I could put a filter on it, but if you like it, we're gonna keep it.
No, I feel like I want to start drawing on it and find my way through the maze.
It's almost like a Rorschach test. I keep seeing things in it that I try to point out. One of them looks like one of the things I can see in is like the poster art for Anatomy of a Murder. Remember that old?
Oh yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now you can go on YouTube and see Harry Lennix in the flesh. Right, how good looking this man looks, and the incredible painting and artistry behind him. Right, Dylan?
That's right.
I'm telling you, we want to comment on it. We want you to comment exactly what do you think of Harry's wife's art. All right, Harry.
Better be good. That's all
Harry, he's gonna look at all these comments too. By the way, he's gonna be like, All right, so where are you in again? What state are you in?
I'm in New York City, man. It was a torrential downpour maybe 3 hours ago, and now it's a beautiful sunshiny afternoon here.
Are we working there, or do you live there?
Well, I lived here for the last 11 years. I was doing the television show, The Blacklist, which shot here.
Have you heard of that, Dylan? Have you heard of the hit show, The Blacklist?
It sounds familiar.
It was only on 11 seasons. It was very hard to catch. It was very hard.
Yeah, it was. It's but the 11th season in particular, so this one only did 10 seasons, but we're
Are you guys still shooting, or are you done shooting?
No, we're done. The series wrapped up about a year ago. And my wife and I decided to stay here for another year just because she loves New York City. This is where we met, actually, many, many years ago when I was on stage doing a play. I went into a restaurant, and there was my wife. So she loves this city, but I think we're going to kind of wrap up things here.
Is your wife an actress as well, or what was she doing in New York at the time?
Well, interestingly enough, she is not an actress, although she does make a small cameo appearance in Destination Heaven, a very tiny little.
No way!
role.
Which one?
So there's in the episode that you all were kind enough to let me direct, which was with my friend Doug. Is that his name? Big Doug, tall.
No, Doug Jones.
Doug Jones.
You directed that episode? I didn't know that.
I did. I directed that episode, and my wife came out to sort of give me some moral support, literally and figuratively. And so she makes a small appearance. She walks through the church and she says, "Good sermon, Pastor Dave," and that's her.
Speaking of Destination Heaven, not to get way ahead of ourselves, but it is funny that we test those episodes to see which one is the most popular, that is the pilot, because I think we shot 6 of them or 8 of them. I feel like
6.
It was 6 of them. Okay. And that was like a long time in coming, but you were always first and foremost in our brain if we could possibly get you to play the God character. That was a big celebration at PureFlix when you said you would do this. It really was.
Well, I was over the moon to do it, so thank you.
Yeah, but that was the best episode, is my point. That was the most popular episode, and I don't know whether they actually did, because Great American Media came in and took it over, but I'm not sure whether or not they made that the pilot episode or not. But it was by far, it was either the pilot or the end, somewhere along the way. because it was the most popular one, the one you
That's good
directed.
to know. I had a lot of help there. It was a really great atmosphere. The script was terrific. Doug was fantastic in
Yeah.
it. And Tanya, the lady who played his girlfriend in it, was great. So really great episode, and I really loved that whole idea. It was both sort of moving, but also very amusing. I mean, Doug, of course, is an incredible actor, so he can wring out anything to get the kind of humor in there. But he also has a tremendous depth,
Yeah.
and I thought in its way, it really was kind of the indicative relationship that you might want to have with God, somebody that you can have fun with, but actually will talk some truth to you, or at least reveal some truth, I guess in most cases. But I really, really very much was grateful that I got that episode to direct. I think it was more or less the drawing of a straw to figure out which one I would be doing. But
Well, that was pretty cool. Yeah, Doug Jones. That was I've known him since in my early 20s, actually, in a Bible study called Media Fellowship International. And so Billy Zabka was in that, and all that from the Karate Kids and the Cobra Kai's, of course. And then Doug, and there was a whole host of like young celebrities and people on TV shows. And so Doug I've known for 20 some years, but I've never cast him in anything. And so when Destination came around, it was like, you know what? I think he'd be hilarious in this thing, and at the same token, not be in a mask and everything else that he always does.
right.
So okay, so wait, so how did you get into acting? Where did you what was your You obviously went into theater first and in New York, right?
Chicago, actually. So my path to it was it's both kind of standard, I think, for a lot of actors who are Catholic. I grew up Catholic my whole life. I went to a Catholic seminary. I was going to studying to be a priest when I was a very young fellow, which is really when I got to be and when I really got introduced to theater. The priest who was directing the plays took me to see my first professional play. I was 15 years old. It was a production of Fiorello. And I remember looking at the production and how much money that they obviously had. And they had a turntable stage, where every time the tables would turn, it was a new set. Everybody had like these beautiful costumes. I was overwhelmed. And I thought, man, that's what I want to do. I want to do something like that.
What theater was that at? Do you remember? In Chicago? That wasn't the Steppenwolf back in the day.
It was not. It was not the Steppenwolf. I just did a play at Steppenwolf, by the way.
Yeah.
But this was it was out in Lake Forest. I cannot remember the name of the theater. It might have been the Limelight Theater or something like this, but or the Forum or whatever. Some kind of.
How old are you when you're doing this? Are you like super young, like out of high school?
I was 15 at that time.
Oh, in high school. Okay.
I was in high school, and I had just done a production of Guys and Dolls, where I played one of the gamblers. Benny South Street was his name. So that was really my first foray into acting. And I, to be honest, the way that I got intrigued was I kept seeing these pretty girls that showed up at the school. And this is an all-boys school, being a seminary. I was like, what are they doing here? And so it turns out that they were auditioning for our spring musical. And I went in there, I gave an audition, and they put me in it, Father Bridge at the time. And he allowed me to do the play. And after that, I got the bug, and I was ready really to see what else I could glean from it, what I could learn from it, which turns out to be quite a lot, a lifetime of continual lessons.
At 15 years old, do you have the same voice that you did then?
I think so. Well, pretty close. I probably didn't. I hadn't had a cigar at that point, but from time to time, I do have one of those now. So it's a little rougher, a little more gravelly, but it was certainly very deep by the time I turned 15.
Wow.
I can almost remember the day. I woke up in the morning. I asked my mother what was for breakfast or something, and her back was to me, and she turned around and looked at me, and she said, "Your voice changed," and it dropped about a whole octave, I think. And so she was the first one to inform me. It just really happened overnight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do because you do a ton of voiceover work too, don't you? With
A
that
fair
voice.
amount,
Yeah.
yeah, a fair amount. Occasionally I'll do some animation stuff or, um, announcer stuff, that kind of stuff. But that's a kind of very hot market. You know this yourself, I'm sure. Trying to do voiceover work, you have to compete against some of my favorite actors, guys like Keith David and Alec Baldwin and Morgan Freeman does a fair amount of them. George Clooney.
Wow,
Yeah,
those
so there's a
yeah, it's
market.
not like he's competing with the guy down the street, Dylan. It's like
I think they're competing with him.
yeah, exactly. Who did you hope to emulate when you were younger, getting into this whole thing? Was it James Earl Jones, or was it like, I mean, because I'm sure it wasn't George Clooney you were looking at. Like, he's got a similar voice as mine, or Alec Baldwin. Or did you connect to the voices thing, or was it something else that you connected to?
It's very interesting. I think the first person that I wanted to really study, like when I remember I got interested in acting, I started asking people, well, who should I look at? If you're a basketball player, you look at certain basketball players. Baseball, I was a great Bill Buckner fan, by the way, who was a Cub when I was a child before he went to the Sox. But everybody kept saying Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando's like, man, who is this Marlon Brando? And I had heard of The Godfather. I hadn't seen it at that point. But in those days, you used to literally, this was before VHR, VHS. These were the days that you would literally have to stay up until like 11 at night when they started running the movies on the 3 channels that we had. And I would look at these old movies, and so I discovered Marlon Brando. And then I secondly discovered Laurence Olivier because I heard he was great. And then I heard that Alec Guinness was great, so I studied him. And then I heard that Sidney Poitier was great, so I looked at him. And so those were probably the first 4 pillars of acting that I studied. And then, of course, once I started discovering women actors, man, the world really opened up. Their nuance, their ability to to use the entirety of their body and their voice, and to play these kind of heightened moments of melodrama in those old movies that I was studying at the time. I've had the great occasion even to meet some of these idols later on in my life. I work out at the gym, at least for a little while. Worked out with the great Faye Dunaway, who was an early discovery of mine. Who's a tremendous actor. If you look at those movies of hers, from Network to Thomas Crown Affair to Chinatown, what a great actress.
I think she was in our Case for Christ. I think that was it. Yeah.
The great Faye Dunaway. Yes.
The great Faye Dunaway, yes. Interesting. So okay, so where did you go then? Where did you go to school? In Chicago?
I did. I was just outside of Chicago. After I graduated from high school, I wound up going to Northwestern University.
Okay.
And there I met a whole bunch of people who would later go on to do a lot of many great things. I was in school, for example, with David Schwimmer, who was a couple of years behind me, a guy by the name of George Newbern, a great actor with a tremendous amount of faith. He and his wife, Marietta de Prima, exceptionally talented actors who I could also talk about, the Word of God with from time to time. They were not Catholic, but they were extraordinarily knowledgeable, and we had a great deal in common. So my faith has always been extremely important to me. I've never not considered it, even though from time to time it is, wavered or come in and out of focus. I was always sort of compelled by the commonalities between acting and, for example, being a priest, or between the theater and the church, what those rituals, what that spectacle is, how symbols play into what it is that we do. All of these things actually have always drawn me, probably from the time I was about 7.
Is it the performance aspect that draws you to the, like the idea of being a priest, or, where they're very similar? the arts,
I think
the
it is. I think
pageantry,
more,
the
as much as the performance, and obviously some priests are far more interesting than other priests. You don't have to, you know that, I'm sure, of course. I don't know how many Catholic churches you've been in, but it's certainly the case in Protestant churches.
yeah.
For example, when I'm in LA, the church I go and worship at is a Church of God in Christ church. It's a Pentecostal church. And I so love the music, and I so love the spirit and the distillation of the word of scripture that I just feel right at home there. So I think it's interesting to use the word performance, the performance of the preacher, priest, whoever is leading that service.
Well,
In
I
this case,
actually say it. I say it almost a little bit of. I don't mean that genuinely, because I think you hope that the leader, the priest, the pastor, whoever is leading the service is having their own relationship with their heavenly Father, and they're ultimately hoping to open the eyes of of the people that are there. But I think the mainstream audience always looks at it as a performance of, oh, this is just a show. That guy's just putting on a show. And in some ways, it is a prepared, they are preparing what they're going to say. So I guess it has performance aspects to it. But
yep.
I'm curious of
Like
what
a
you
presentation,
think.
certainly, right? Yeah.
Okay, so did you actually want to be a priest?
Yes, I did. I still do.
Instead, you're just playing one now in shows. So instead, you're
That's
playing God in shows like Destination Heaven.
yes, actually, that's a step above, obviously. Yeah, but
Well, you might have to be a pastor because you're married, right? I think you're married, aren't you? Yeah.
yes.
So the priest thing, you can't be married as a priest, can you, Dylan?
I don't know.
Wow, Dylan, way to go.
I know. You're
See,
welcome.
now Dylan may not know this, David, but the fact is, if I had been born a Protestant,
Okay.
was married, and became
A priest?
became a leader of a church, a
Yeah.
preacher, pastor.
Well, then you could be married. Yeah.
You could be married, be a pastor, and then if you decide you want to convert to Catholicism, Pope John Paul II found this rule. It's an arcane rule, but there's some like 11 or 1,200 priests now who are married who converted to Catholicism, and you can keep your wife.
Hey. Well, you know what? I wonder how many how many people are going, I'm going to, convert to Catholicism, and therefore this marriage is over. I don't know where the alimony and all that stuff will play into this, but it's not it's God. God's telling me to do this.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
That's almost a movie right there. That should be a comedy, like that Sean Penn one where the nuns on the run or something. Remember that thing? They were nuns.
Yeah,
I think De Niro, wasn't it? De
so.
Niro? It was like so weird.
Yeah.
Where they're running in their nun outfit. Okay, so when do you get your first break though? Like when does Harry Lennix hit that people become aware? Is it TV or is it movies, or what point in time did you break through?
I'm going to keep you posted on that, David. I don't know.
Oh, good Lord. Good grief.
Let's see. I think the first thing I did that was noted was actually The Five Heartbeats with Robert Townsend, which was shot in 1990. I play a member of a group, like a boys group, kind of like the Temptations, if it would be the easiest reference are the Temptations or the Four Tops, but we were Five Heartbeats.
Did you do that in New York or LA?
We shot it in LA.
And had you moved to LA at the time, or were you still living in New York?
Interestingly, when there was such a thing called pilot season, I went out one pilot season. I had auditioned for the movie while I was teaching school. I was a substitute school teacher in Chicago. That was my day job. Like many people are waiters and so forth. Mine was teaching school. And so I took a half day and I snuck off to this audition. And it was for the Five Heartbeats. And there wasn't even any real, usually get those audition pages, what we call sides, There weren't any sides. It was just literally an interview, a conversation with Robert Townsend.
Wow.
And I wound up going out to LA for pilot season. So three
Was
months
Robert
maybe
Townsend
after
as
I
big
did
as he
that,
was at that point? Had he already crested?
he was he had done this movie called Hollywood Shuffle, which he
Yeah.
financed on credit cards, and it was a hit. And so he was a big deal at that time.
Okay. It's interesting though
I
that
had
he wanted to meet people. And how many of those meetings can you possibly have in a day if you think about it? As a director, and you're like, okay, I just want to meet the person. I'm not going to give them sides to read. Like that's a lot of conversation in a day.
Robert is like an energizer buddy, man. He'll never stop. He probably was talking to 100 people. I wouldn't be surprised if he could talk to 100 people in a day. I'm not saying he did that
Yeah.
in Chicago, but there were literally audition days where there were lines around the block in places like LA, Detroit. He went all over the country to cast the movie, and it was an open call. In my case, of course, it was set up through my agent at the time, but hundreds of people were lining up to talk to him and to audition. So,
And you were doing theater at that time, right? And so was this this was your first into the whatever, the film. This is his first film.
it was my second film. Like I had done a movie, second thing on the big screen. Now people don't make these distinctions, but so much. But I did a movie with the great Gene Hackman called The Package. And that was
Oh,
my first movie.
wow. Okay. I should probably be looking at your 60 pages here and try to find you the thing so I don't even have to ask you the questions. Dylan's looking at me like, "What? Why do you even ask him this? It's right there on page 38."
It's all ancient history, David. That's all right. Look, you can study your notes as much as you want.
Okay, so wow, so you go from Gene Hackman to Robert Townsend. Like, what is Harry thinking at this point in time? Are you like, oh my gosh, am I on fire? My voice is paying off, and look at this face, how good looking I am.
Well, I wasn't that heady. I wasn't that confident in whether people would think I was good looking or talented or whatever. I was just auditioning for everything that came down the pike. I
How
think
old are you
in
at that
the first two
time?
movies, when I did The Package, I must have been 24 because I was 25 when I did The Five Heartbeats. I know that. So it's almost like a year later, maybe
Yeah.
a little better than a year. Yeah.
How was Gene Hackman to work with, by the way?
Wonderful. I think he grew up, I don't know where he was born, but he grew up in Danville, Illinois. It's the same town that Dick Van Dyke is from, Bobby Short from the great Carlisle Hotel here. Dick Van Dyke, his brother, Gene Hackman, and Bobby Short are like the famous people who came from that little town in Illinois. So
Did you have very many scenes with him? We're going to show this on our YouTube, by the way.
I
In case
did
you don't know.
I might have had 3 scenes with him, and in one of the scenes, and they were all tiny little things. I was a soldier in his unit.
Okay.
He was like a colonel or something, and they needed me to cry because we lost one of our soldiers. We lost one of our fellows in this scene, and the director was like, "Okay, well, we're going to need somebody to cry. Harry, you roll him." And so he called action, and so I froze up because there was no preparation, there was no anything of that nature.
You didn't do
Gene
your
Hackman,
Denzel thing, when he wasn't it the Denzel when he's gosh, what
Glory.
Glory?
Glory.
Yes, his famous
Yeah.
crying moment.
Yeah, that's one of the great crying moments on screen. Of
Yeah.
course. I don't know what Denzel Washington did, but I don't think. But I had Gene Hackman, so there you go. and he kind of let me take a minute to put myself in a mental space, emotional space, and then we rolled it, and I got it. And of course, they immediately cut it out of the movie as soon as they
What?
did the first year. Yeah, that I don't think that part made it in.
Wow.
That's
All
all
right.
right.
All right. So where do we go from Robert Townsend then? From that one, how do you go from? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do
Well,
you? Are you now a movie star at this point? Because now
No.
you're doing movies.
No, I wasn't. I didn't. The movie was in the can. Nobody had seen it yet, so it wasn't any kind of immediate reaction. But right after that, I wound up doing, of all things, I wound up doing a Perry Mason episode called The Case of the Defiant Daughter. And that was like a month or two after we finished the Five Heartbeats. So I went to Colorado Springs and I worked with Raymond Burr and Robert Culp and Robert Vaughn and Della Barbara Hale, who played Della Street, and all these great legends that I had this great pleasure of working with. And we all watched Perry Mason when we were kids. And after that, I couldn't get any more acting work. So I came back to Chicago and I started teaching school again.
Come on.
Yeah.
What do you mean you couldn't get any more acting work?
They you know what I mean? There was heavy competition back then.
Come on, you're Harry Lennix with an amazing voice.
I wasn't Harry Lennix yet. It took several years.
Did it so when you went back to teaching, how long did you give it though before you said, okay, I'm waiting before I go back to teaching? Like, was it, I mean, you just came off of big movies.
Yeah, it's true. But those, unfortunately, the Five Heartbeats certainly didn't catch fire like they originally thought it might. And so it was more or less starting from square one. So I went back, taught school, did some more plays in Chicago theater. They don't pay very much, so you wound up having to do this day job. So I would act at night and I would do plays. I would rehearse and I would act at night and I would teach during the day.
Wow. And where would the auditions, when you had an audition during the day, were you able to skip out of school?
Yes. So if being a substitute, I could either call out and not work that day, or I had a magnificent principal when I wound up being assigned to one particular school. Her name was Mrs. Marcella Gilly, and she would let me take a half day, and she would send in a substitute teacher for me, because I was a music teacher, so it was not so easy to find somebody who could play music or whatever, but yeah, I wound up being able to go downtown Chicago, which is where most of the auditions were, and you would go down. It would take an hour to get there and an hour to get back. So as long as you had a couple of hours, you can go in and do an audition or two.
Yeah. Are you 30 at this point yet, or are you still in your mid-20s?
Well, I was in my mid to late 20s during all of this period.
Okay.
I did not turn 30 until I moved out to New York at the behest of my one-time schoolmate, Emily Gerson Sains. And she had become, of all things, an agent of William Morris. This was before they merged with Endeavor. It was William Morris. And she was from New York. And I went to Northwestern with her.
Yeah.
And she remembered me from school. And so she called me up and she said, what are you doing? I said, well, I teach school. And she said, well, come to New York and I'll represent you. And so that's what I did. So when I did that, I was 30. That was 1994, turned into 80. Wait a minute. I was 30 in 95. Yeah. In 1995.
Wow. Okay. So you, and then you go out there and she represents you. Did she represent you well? Was she a great agent? I mean, she was at Warner,
William Morris.
Yeah, William Morris. So clearly she was really good.
She's a great agent. She was a great agent. Now she's a great manager, and she still manages me to this day.
Okay. That's cool. Wow,
Yeah,
that's super cool. All right, so where do we go? What is your first one back then, now that you moved to New York? Like, what's the first one that goes boom?
So, interestingly, New York has arguably the English-speaking world's best theater city. And so I did a play here with the phenomenal talent Julie Taymor, but also did a couple of movies. I auditioned for a bunch of stuff that I didn't get, and then I got something called it was with Shirley MacLaine, one of my very favorite actresses of all time. We did a thing called Guarding Tess. Shirley MacLaine, Nick Cage.
Yeah, that's such a good one. Yeah.
I played one of her Secret Service guys.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I wound up doing some other, episodes of things. And then, and through the years, while I was still in Chicago, I did a movie called Mo Money with Damon Wayans. I did a TV movie Judith Light, a bunch of stuff, you know, in between.
Do you like what is your like the path of okay, so cuz you've done so much over the years, right? I mean, for like how in the world, okay, I'm jumping ahead, but how in the world do you end up in Superman, right? Batman versus Superman, you're playing Superman's dad, right? Aren't you?
No,
No,
I
no, no,
wish.
no. No, you're not.
Russell Crowe.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Wait, who are you playing in Superman then?
So I to the glass because he can see beyond it. Obviously, he's got these
Yeah.
great superpowers. Everybody else flinches and they move back, with the exception of my character. And I remember asking Zack Snyder. I was like, well, you know,
The director.
yeah, the director. I was like, well, I don't think that my character would move back. You know, he's a military man. He's got to be the leader of these people. And so, but yeah, so that's how that character then got turned into the Martian Manhunter in Zack's version of the Justice League,
Yeah.
because he does not flinch. But
The unflinching man.
the unflinching man, the man with the nerves of steel. He's the man of steel. I'm the guy with the nerves of steel. But seriously, I was without work for over a year, David. I was sitting on my couch and thinking.
This is before. This is before the Blacklist, right?
Before,
Yeah.
this is before the Blacklist. So you know how it is. You go hot and cold. The industry gets hot and cold. You can't get arrested, and then all of a sudden you're turning down work because you can't do everything.
You're
at
so
once.
busy.
And this is one of those times. And I remember hearing that Superman was going to get done, that they were going to reboot the whole franchise. And I thought to myself, man, it would be really, really cool to be in that. And, you know, I go back to the faith. I think that, you know, you open that question up to God. And I got a call, again, without auditioning, out of the blue. And they said, Warner Brothers is redoing Superman. And they want you in the movie. They don't know what role yet, but they know that they want you, but they want to know if you would be willing to read opposite the potential actors that they have to play Superman. I was like, man, you know, look, try to keep me away from that offer. I'll be there. I'll be there before they get there. And that's what went down. We went up to the Santa Monica Mountains. Henry Cavill, I remember seeing him. I drove up to the mountains. They had this little parking space, and I had these honey wagons. And I saw this beautiful man shaving in the mirror.
Not you, Dylan. I know you were thinking he's talking about you, Dylan, but he's actually talking about Henry Cavill, the Superman.
Dang it.
But so that's how that went, man. It was just one of those things where you put it out there, and the next thing I knew, I was in the movie.
How well, first of all, how long did you work on that movie? How long did that take?
I don't think I did more than 3 weeks. They concentrated all of my stuff in a 3-week period.
Yeah.
Most of that was done in Vancouver, and a little bit was done in the Sierra Madres. We were up there.
So you had a year. Did you say a year or longer than a year before that you hadn't worked?
About a year.
Okay.
A good solid year.
What is your agent telling you at this point? Were you just auditioning a lot, or were you even auditioning at this moment? Like, for that year, like, was it a time when you were like, no, I'm not auditioning anymore. People just do meetings. If they want to do a meet and greet, I'll do that. What was that like for the year in between that?
Well, I was happy to audition, you know, and I did a fair amount of those.
But is your agent like, no, it's Harry Lennix, for crying out loud. I went to school with this genius legend of a man.
Well, by that point, my agent was my manager, so she couldn't, she could help once I got the audition. But no, man, it was just, you know, I mean, it's not like they needed to talk me down from it. I know how the business works. Sometimes, like I say, you're hot, it goes hot and cold. This was a particularly cold time, but I was seriously contemplating getting out of the industry and going back into
teaching,
get a degree so I could teach school.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you married at this time?
Yes.
Was your wife like, come on now, we need a more consistent income? I mean, you made us a lot of money, clearly, but like,
No, she didn't say anything like that. She had a job, and she was making a whole lot more money than I was at that time. But that said, we had just gotten married, really, not long before that, a couple of years. But
It's interesting, though. How old are you during that year? Are you in your 30s, 40s?
40s.
Like, it's interesting that after all that, you had done a lot up to that point with big movie stars, that you actually have a thought of that you're going to go back to teaching.
Yeah, that's how grim it was. Like, that's how discouraged I was from the acting point of view. I just didn't think that it was going to change.
Had it been because you had, these big moments, whatever, the different movies that just you felt like they didn't catapult you up to that next level, or that even at that level it was always just you're just kind of tired of doing these auditions and that whole thing?
It wasn't even that I was tired of the auditions or that I thought that, there was some, that I was going to be an overnight, many years night sensation, or, get up to whatever the next tier was. I guess the A-list or the B-list, wherever.
The Blacklist.
That said. The Blacklist. Very good. Very good. It's just that I wasn't getting any traction. So I figured, I had been let go by my agency. At the time I was with a big agency. They let me go. It took me several months to find an agent. With the help of my manager, we found, a good solution for that. But then, it's almost like they have to, you know how it is, David, this industry is run by young people who are just out of school. They have no idea what the last 10 years of filmmaking is. So God forbid that they should go back and look at, movies that are 20 years old by this point or things like that. So they really didn't know who I was. So I had to sort of reintroduce myself.
All right. So when did the Blacklist? How did we get into the Blacklist?
So
so you go do the Superman movie, right? And then you did Justice League, like pretty much following that, I take it.
Yes. So now Justice League was not until many years later. So I did.
Like, did the Blacklist come in between those two?
No, Blacklist was after Superman or Man of Steel.
Okay.
And then they did the other two Superman movies. They did Batman versus Superman, but that was while I was doing the Blacklist. But before the Blacklist came along, I was doing, I was auditioning and taking classes at the City College, right down the street from me. I was taking French, and music, and Spanish. I was taking all these classes because I had time on my hand. And I was thinking about quitting. I was thinking about maybe I should find another, some other option to this acting thing. Maybe even find new representation. And my agent called me out of the blue. My manager called me out of the blue, Emily, and she said, "Look, right down the street from where you live, you could walk there. There's an audition. It's for a new television show." And they hadn't even cast James Spader at this point. They cast my friend Megan Boone to play Elizabeth Keene, but that's the only cast they had. And then literally the next day, I was on the plane to New York.
Just to audition?
From that audition, I did the audition.
Oh, you did the audition there. Okay. And then boom, they cast you. They were like, and you were going to work that fast?
Yes.
Wow.
The next day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is. I think that's an interesting thing that probably the people that watch this don't and listen to our podcast. They don't really understand how fast the industry is. This weird thing that it's like some things take forever. Like we could start something and it doesn't even come to fruition until 10, 12 years later. Like Destination Heaven, for example, took us forever to get that going. That came off of I loved The Encounter. The Encounter really resonated with people. And so we were like, okay, let's do Destination Heaven, but with God as opposed to Jesus as that main character. And,
right.
And then it came and it went through a long writing thing that took forever for us to get going. Same thing with Nothing's Impossible. I went through 10 different drafts. That was a 10-year process before I finally got to do that. But because obviously all the viewer sees is they just watch it and think, oh, they probably did that, how fast. And how fast Harry Lennix has been a superstar since before I can remember. So, okay, so the Blacklist goes on. Had you ever met James Spader at the time, or how was that?
No, I had never met him. I had seen many of his works. I think he's obviously. I
Yeah,
think he's wonderful,
quite
wonderful.
talented.
So, but no, that was my first time.
Interesting. And was he everything like his movies? Because he played pretty creepy in movies, right? And even in the show, he's definitely he's an odd duck. Like, yeah. Sorry to ask this question, but you worked with him for 11 years.
I did. Yeah,
Are you guys having
he's an
coffee in the
enigma.
morning every morning now? Is this like, are you guys go out and walk your dogs, or what's happening?
No, I don't see him socially, although I like him. I did one time have I had a long cross-country flight. We flew from New York to LA together to do some press stuff, and we were sitting next to each other. That was the longest conversation I've ever had with him. But he's a extremely lovely and professional and courteous gentleman. He knows what he wants, but he's also, he's sort of a recluse. He keeps to himself a fair amount, and at least that's his demeanor on the set, and I respect that. That's all fine.
He's not like a guy who ends up having 38 of his friends coming by the set all the time, and he's like, you hear like out of his dressing room in between.
I don't think 38 people came by to visit Jay Spader on set the whole 10 years that we were working together.
Who was the out of the Blacklist? Who was the most vivacious like individual? Who was the most social? Who had the most people coming to that set to visit?
I guess it would have to be
Such an
there's
odd
a guy,
question, Dylan. It's so
yeah,
random.
it's a great question. I hadn't thought about it. I think the most sociable person was Amir Arison, who played Aram.
Okay.
The computer tech nerd guy.
Wow.
He's very active on social media.
Yeah.
And then Megan Boone is a wonderfully social person too. She must have like 1 million followers on those platforms.
Well, they're a little younger too. They're a little more trendy.
That's right. That's a young man's game, a young woman's game.
All right. So what's going on with you in social media? Do you did you start social media during the Blacklist? Like what were you like? Boom! It's time for Harry to come out.
We did. Unfortunately, David, this is a problem that I'm having. The person who's my social media manager person has gone AWOL. I cannot find her. And she's got all of my password and all.
Oh my gosh! The good news is Dylan's here, and Dylan is my social media guru, and he's going to help you.
Okay, all right.
He's going to find you. He's going to find that missing lady. Wait a second! You were on the Blacklist for crying out loud. That's your job, is to find missing people.
If only life imitated art like that, we'd be.
When did this happen? Sorry, not to delve on this. In fact, that's an off conversation about just for a second, because I know the audience is like, what?
Your tuner, the people tuning in should know that this does happen.
200,000 people. Come on, Harry.
I have 200,000 followers, and I can't get to them. I can't send them any information. This is about a year ago, and I cannot get in.
Wow.
We recovered Facebook, but I can't get into my Instagram, which is where I had 200,000 people waiting. So
all right. Well, Dylan's going to help you out on this. He's
all right, Dylan. I'm ready, baby.
Yeah, I got you. I'll help you.
He'll help you. He does that. He's in the business of helping people. So Harry, Blacklist, were you happy that it wrapped up after? Was it 10 or 11 seasons? I keep wanting to say 11.
It was 10. And I was.
Is that because it's a magic number and they didn't want to go into another decade, or is it because of 10 was, the audience wanted 11 and the studio was like, nope, 10's the number?
From what I understand, the network wanted it, the audience, wanted it. We were a big show overseas, certainly. But I think James Spader was tired. After we lost Elizabeth Keene's character, I think that he felt that it was no longer the same show, and he didn't believe at that point that he wanted to go doing a completely radically different show than he had signed on to do, for 8 seasons before that time that we lost her. So I think he was just, a little tired. I was satisfied that it had told whatever story it needed to tell. That we wrapped up what we set out to do. but like my accountant, I'm sure, and my wife, I miss the work, and I miss the family that we created there.
Is that now how many episodes did you guys do over the, is it 22 a year?
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
like 222?
I think we did a total, because of pandemic, we did a total of 218 episodes.
Oh, got it. Okay. And you worked, did you work pretty much through the pandemic, or did you guys take a break?
We took off, I think we got off in May. It was May 13th. I remember the day. May, June, July, August, September, October. We started working like 5 months after that.
Okay.
Yeah, with all the protocols and all the rest of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay, so Harry, after accomplishing all of this in your life, right, and now you're directing, you're producing, you're playing God in things. What do you've already worked with David A.R. White in one of his favorite films, Nothing's Impossible. So what is Harry Lennix like? Where is the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Like, what is in your? Do you have a vision board, or do you have a vision of what is to come, or are you still thinking about going back to teaching?
Well, the board is right in here. I've been working on a project for the last 5 years, which is a kind of civic project. It really is a land development project. I'm trying to build a cultural performing arts center on the south side of Chicago, where I come from. We call this the Bronzeville Renaissance Project. So it'll have a performing arts theater, two little theaters, which would be a resident theater for a company that I've been associated with for the past 25 years. Dance, music, theater, film, and television. Then, in addition to that, we're going to build a museum where we can archive all of that, all of what is done, and all of the stuff that talks about the performing history of Black America. Where you get to play music with Duke Ellington, through technology and all of these things. So we're doing that. I did a
Are you like in a huge fundraiser for this? Like, what is the cost of something like this?
Well, we don't know what the final cost will be. The inflation is terrible, but we were given a $26 million grant from the state of Illinois to get started.
Super cool.
I'm still waiting for that money to come through, by the way, so we haven't been able to break ground yet. But that was announced 2 years ago, and we are waiting for that money to. It has been released, but we're waiting it so that we can get under construction. So that's my magnum opus. That's the big thing that I'm working on. I also have the great pleasure, and I would love for you to see this sometime. Maybe we can talk about this offline, but I have a movie where I'm not playing God, but I play a bishop of Brooklyn Diocese, and I'm one of the producers on this movie. And it's really a fascinating story about the first governor of New York, first Latina governor of New York, who's a Catholic, who I excommunicate her because she signs into law a late-term abortion bill. Now, and that's really the first half of the movie. And then the second half of the movie is the relationship that develops, not romantic relationship, but a pastoral relationship that develops between the bishop and this governor. So it's a quite fascinating movie. It's called Godless, and I think it deals with many topical issues. And I'm trying to get other projects off the ground that as a producer, writer, director, etc. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, I hope to be able to work with you on the directing side sometime. With you directing.
I would love that.
I would love that. It's funny. It says you just completed 2 plays at the Steppenwolf Theater and the Goodman Theater. I actually spent, I'm from Chicago. My dad was from outside of South Side Chicago.
You told me that. You did tell me that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then my whole family went to Moody Bible Institute there. And so when I turned 18, I went there for 1 year of Moody, and then I went to LA when I was 19.
Wow, man.
Yeah, so I parked cars at all the hot spots there, and everybody from Harry Carey's to Ditka's to all those things, because they would hire the valet companies would realize, well, hey, the Bible students probably won't steal from us. So from Michael Jordan's car and all those athletes that were coming in and out at that time. So I have a love for Chicago because that's when I first kind of learned about acting and how it was even done. And I learned to drive Porsches in the parking lot of the Steppenwolf Theater when Malkovich was there doing with Gary Sinise when they were doing Mice and Men actually at the time. So yeah. That's cool that you're like a landmark now of Chicago, the Chicago theater and all of that. Very cool.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. I guess I've been a professional actor. It'll be 40 years this year as a pro.
All right, so we got to go here soon, but tell me what is our tagline's Dare to Dream. What do you tell young actors? I know it's a question you've had it for 40 years of how to break into this industry, should they, and or what's your advice to them?
Well, my first advice in terms of breaking into the industry is be relentless. Do not stop. Be persistent. And if you're diligent in that way, opportunity will come up. But you got to be honest with yourself. Are you trying to be a movie star, or are you trying
Lennix.
to be a great actor?
Like
trying to be Harry Lennix.
Like Harry Lennix.
Or are you trying to be an actually good actor? so that's the first thing that I talk to them. And then when it comes to how to become a good actor, I always take them to 2 Timothy, study to show thyself approved.
Wow.
That you have to be diligent. You have to study. Who are the people that you like? Why do you like them? And then then break all of that down, start watching them, and repeat and repeat and repeat. There's 3 words that the great Cannonball Adderley said when giving advice on how to play the saxophone. He said, imitate, integrate, innovate. So that's my advice.
That's
Imitate,
pretty cool.
Integrate, innovate.
Wow. It's yeah. Okay, so do you go from where does Harry go for the rest of the day? That's what I want to know. Do you go eat a sandwich now? Do you go out for a walk? Or what's happening today in Harry's life?
Well, I hadn't thought about it. I was so looking forward to this, that this was the bulk of my day, David. But I'm going to go have a sandwich.
Nice. Harry, thank you so much for joining us here. You're truly a delight. I really, really appreciate John Shepard for making the introduction so many years ago, and it's you're a legend, and I'm always honored to just be anywhere with you.
Thank you, David. It's very mutual. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again, Harry. All right, talk to you soon. Well, Dylan, I mean, Harry Lennix, good grief. Like, what a cool guy, right?
No, I mean, all the stuff he's done throughout his career, the people he's worked with.
Just amazing. Amazing. What's also amazing to me is that how like you think something, you look at his life and you would never have any idea that it was as complicated as he had to go through.
Absolutely.
And all the times where he thought that he wanted to just get out of the business and retire, become a school teacher, do something different because, he wasn't making it.
Well, and like he was saying,
even though he had done like massive movies, that's what's so astounding about life in a lot of ways.
100%. And he talked about, the ups and downs, the hurry up and wait. It's that hurry up and wait that happens in this industry all the time.
A great man of faith. A great man, an unbelievable actor, an unbelievable voice. I love Harry Lennix. Obviously, I think I got introduced to him in the Blacklist and then kind of worked my way back through all kinds of different things. But super cool. Well, all right. Guys, I appreciate you. And whether you're watching this on YouTube, by the way, YouTube, you're going to want to watch this on YouTube. Have I said that enough times, Dylan? You want to watch this on
more.
YouTube?
There you go.
I mean, seriously, why do people want to watch this on YouTube?
I think we need another YouTube in there.
Okay, because you guys are going to see, I know Dylan's making a joke, but I'm being serious here. You guys are going to see Harry Lennix from when he was a little kid all the way through till when he was a priest, to a pastor, to a husband, to, not to mention like clips from the Blacklist, from all kinds, guarding tests, like all the Superman.
I
like,
remember Mo Money. I grew
Mo
up watching
Money.
that was hilarious.
So that, and if you can't get to a computer and you're driving, I suppose, even though you could be holding your phone like this, you're going to want to check out YouTube right now. Do you agree that you should hold your phone like this while you're driving? Comment yes or no. Like this, you're driving. All right, then listen to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Good Pods, all kinds of places where you can get podcasts. We love you guys. We appreciate you. And God bless you. We'll see you next time.